The stone floor of the observatory is always cold, no matter how fiercely the sun blazes outside, and you feel it now beneath your knees as you lean forward, tracing the arc of a star across the parchment chart before you. The candles on the table flicker low, cheap tallow thick with soot, but you've trained your eyes to read through the smoke. You are 16, the youngest apprentice permitted into this inner chamber of Sagres, the famed school of navigation, founded under the watchful eye of Infante Dom Henrique Henry, the Navigator. And while you're not yet permitted to speak aloud during these nightly councils, your silence is not a reflection of ignorance. It is reverence. It is hunger. Outside, the wind scratches against the small lattice window, carrying with it the sharp salt of the sea and the murmur of tavern songs drifting up from the port below. Inside, old men whisper in Galician and Latin trading tales, not just of geography, but of memory of places seen once and never again. Your master, a scholar with cataracted eyes and fingers yellowed from lamp oil, and age points toward a curled edge of vellum where faint, almost playful ink lines sketch an archipelago labeled in faded script, Insulae Inventae, Islands Discovered. The other apprentices scoff quietly as they often do. Phantom islands, they're not real, they say. Cartographic mistakes, sailors' mirages, indulgences of wine and sunstroke. You, however, do not laugh. You know better than to dismiss what refuses to disappear. Your master turns to you, eyes filmy but sharp. If a man draws a thing, he rasps, he has seen a thing, or dreamed it. And dreams, he adds, have a peculiar habit of washing up on shore. These words lodge themselves into you like splinters. Not long after, they begin to take shape. 2 weeks later, Henry's fleet departs. You are not meant to be among them. Junior navigators, especially ones without noble blood, are typically confined to coastal surveys and port calculations. But the mathematician assigned to São Jorge, the third ship of the expedition, takes sick just days before departure, and your master presses your name into the roster with a solemn nod. He does not wish you luck. No one in Sagres does. Luck has no place in celestial reckoning, only correction. Your mother weeps at the docks. She presses a red ribbon into your palm, once her hair tie, now a talisman. You don't tell her it will catch on your sextant gear and eventually fall into the ocean. She doesn't ask. She only says, "Don't draw what you can't sail back from," as if that's a real rule, as if that kind of choice is ever yours to make. The fleet launches under a sky scraped clean of clouds. 37 sails catch wind. You ride the wave outward on a hull that groans like an old god waking up. The Atlantic does not greet you with violence at first. It lulls and hums, allowing days to pass with nothing more than the creak of ropes and the slap of water against planks. You share a hammock slung beside the salt barrels, dreaming of shorelines you've only traced in ink, reciting stars beneath your breath at night like a rosary. Then something changes. It starts with a bird. A gull, wings torn, circles once above the mast, and then lands in the crow's nest, silent. It does not fly away. By the third day, more come. Not in flocks, alone, limp, watching. Then the wind stops. For 7 days, São Jorge drifts in a windless sea. Her sails slack, her crew growing quieter by the hour. The water smells wrong, like copper and roots. One of the older helmsmen claims the sea has turned into a mirror, not for the sky, but for the past. He won't explain what he means. He just sits drinking slowly, watching the water as if it might blink. On the 8th day, clouds gather, not in the sky at first. They rise from the sea, it seems gray, masses boiling up along the horizon. They churn without wind, and when they reach you, they do not thunder or flash, they muffle. The world becomes soft, as if your ears are filled with wool, your eyes dimmed beneath a heavy veil. The rigging moans. The crew begins to shout, but no one can hear. The only sound that cuts through is the sudden, ragged splitting of wood as the lead ship Santa Marta vanishes beneath a collapsing wave shaped like a hand. You're thrown from your bench, slammed into the railing, and somewhere in the chaos, your sextant is lost to the sea. Someone is crying, someone else is singing. By the time the storm ends, 2 ships are gone. The fleet is shattered, each vessel spun like a coin in different directions. You are told São Jorge is lucky only 3 lost, and the hull still mostly dry. But luck like the stars is no longer where you expect it to be. You take up a compass the next day. Not your own. It belonged to a man now buried in sailcloth beneath the deck. The needle trembles, then points southeast off course against the wind. You tap it. It doesn't move. Follow it. The captain orders, his voice calm but detached. Wherever it goes, we'll chart a new way back. You plot a course by dead reckoning, your fingers tracing lines across a map that no longer matches what you see. You pass a shoal that isn't marked, a reef that shouldn't be, a current flowing north when it should flow west. Then one night you see it, a shape on the horizon, long dark and motionless. Not a ship, not clouds, not a whale, land, but no one cheers. No birds circle it. No scent of trees reaches your nostrils. It is utterly silent, yet undeniable. You pull out every map you can find. Portuguese, Castilian, Genoese. Nothing. Not even a scribbled note. Could be one of the fortunate isles, someone says. But those lie further south. You, however, remember the whispered names back in Sagres. Names like Antillia, Satanazzi's, Brendan's Isle. Islands of mist and error. Islands drawn in the margins. The ship turns toward it. You begin to prepare the landing party. Your hands are steady, but your bones remember the tremor of that compass needle. As dawn approaches, the island does not grow brighter. It seems to absorb the sunlight, instead turning it dull. Someone murmurs that the sea near it is glass. The captain asks you for a heading. You look down at the compass, then at the charts. There is no heading. Still you speak a number. It sounds right. It feels old. The sails shift. The ship groans forward. No gulls cry, no insects hum. You do not know it yet, but this island, this place without name, will not just warp your maps. It will rewrite your memory of maps entirely. Tonight you land, and the stars above Sagres will mean something different forever. The morning arrives with a silence that feels sculpted, as though someone has chiseled away the world's usual clamor and left only the smooth stone of stillness behind. You awaken, not to the familiar bark of the boatswain or the lurch of a changing tide, but to an eerie stasis, the kind of quiet usually reserved for places long abandoned. You lie still in your sling beneath the quarterdeck, listening intently. No footfalls on the planks, no gulls, no creaking timbers speaking back to the ocean. Just your own breath and the faint rasp of your heartbeat in your ears. Climbing up to the deck, you brace yourself against the rail, and there it is again, that shape on the horizon. The Not Island. The question drawn in black ink across the face of the sea. It's closer now, though, still distant enough to hide its details, and it appears almost to hover above the waterline, as if the ocean beneath it is uncertain how to hold it. The captain is already there, one hand gripping the rail, the other tucked behind his back, in that rigid military posture he reverts to when unsure. He doesn't speak, and neither does anyone else. No one on São Jorge has uttered more than a handful of words since the storm. Even the cook, who once sang bawdy songs while cleaving salted meat with a blade older than Portugal itself, has grown quiet. It's as if the crew collectively understands that some thresholds should be crossed with reverence, or not crossed at all. When the captain finally turns to face you, his face looks drawn and centuries older, lined with creases that feel freshly carved by something deeper than weather or age. We make landfall, he says, before the tide shifts. Choose 6 to go with you. I'll remain aboard. You try to swallow, but your mouth has gone dry. You reply, though the word falls out of you like a stone through mist. The men you choose are not the strongest, not the loudest, and not the most experienced. You choose them for silence, for the way they look at the sea, when no one else is watching, for the weight they carry behind their eyes. You do not realize it then, but you're choosing witnesses, not warriors. The longboat is lowered slowly, the ropes groaning, then hissing as they're loosed, hand over hand. The ocean's surface is so smooth it seems unnatural, as though the boat is gliding across a sheet of blackened glass. You grip the tiller tightly, the compass stashed in your vest, useless now perhaps, but a comfort nonetheless. The island does not change as you approach. Most landmasses reveal themselves gradually, first the green of foliage, then rocky outcrops, then birds wheeling overhead, or waves crashing against a reef. But this one remains a silhouette, black and unyielding. It offers no sense, no sounds, no invitation. One of the men murmurs a prayer under his breath. Latin tangled with vernacular, a scrap of superstition passed down from a grandmother who salted thresholds and cursed mirrors. Another man touches a talisman around his neck, a small bone carved with a fish and hung from sinew. You glance at him. He offers no explanation, and you do not ask. When the boat scrapes against the shore, the sound it makes is more like fabric tearing than wood meeting sand. You disembark carefully, boots sinking slightly into the shore, which isn't made of sand, but something finer and darker, like powdered obsidian. It clings to your boots, to your breath, to the folds of your tunic. The others step hesitantly behind you. No one speaks. The land rises slowly ahead of you, not steeply, but with the weight of presence. Sparse trees low to the ground, and leafless are scattered across the incline. Their bark is dark as pitch, and their branches twist as though in silent agony. Moss grows in thick sheets, but it isn't green. It's gray, the color of ash that refuses to cool. You walk inland, drawn by something unseen. You tell yourself it's the desire for a better vantage point to chart this place from its center, to confirm or deny its existence with measurable angles and observable coordinates. But deep inside, you know you're being pulled, the way a tide pulls, the way dreams do. Halfway up the slope, you find the first structure. It is not large. A ring of upright stones, knee-height, weathered and cracked. At first you think it a boundary marker or some crude primitive monument, but as you step closer, you see the etchings. Spirals, interlocking circles, a compass rose but not any you recognize. Its arms bend backward, its cardinal points marked with symbols that make your eyes itch to look upon. You kneel, touch the stone. It's warm. Not from the sun, from within. Behind you, one of the men lets out a low sound part, wonder part, fear. You turn to see what he's looking at. There are more stones ahead. Larger, in rows. Some upright, others toppled. Ruins, unmistakably. But not ruins like those of the Moors or Romans. These are older. Too old. Worn not by weather, but by forgetting. You begin sketching them almost without thinking. Your fingers move of their own accord, dragging charcoal across parchment. You capture angles, shadows, measurements, but also curves that don't belong, lines that flow without purpose, markings that resemble neither script nor drawing. You sketch until your wrist aches, until your hand cramps, until you realize you've drawn something that loops back into itself, a structure that couldn't exist in 3 dimensions. The air has changed. It's heavier now, tinged with something metallic. The light has dimmed, though the sky is still clear. You feel watched, though no creatures stir. Even the trees seem to lean closer, their gnarled limbs pointing inward like fingers, closing around a secret. "Navigator," one of the men says softly behind you. You turn. He's pointing toward a crevice in the rocks ahead, just wide enough for a man to slip through sideways. From it seeps a faint glow like fire seen through thick parchment. You approach. The others hang back. Inside, the crevice opens into a hollow, a shallow cave with walls smoothed by time or intention. The glow comes from mineral veins threading through the stone, pulsing slowly as if the island itself breathes. But that's not what stops you. At the far end of the chamber lies a tablet, stone flat but clearly shaped by hands. On its surface is a map. Not a map like any you've seen. Not even like the wildest imaginings of Genoese or Venetian cartographers. It's circular, layered, impossible. A world drawn in rings, each representing a place that could not exist on Earth. City names that blur when you look at them directly. Coastlines that form labyrinths. Oceans drawn with spirals instead of waves. But it feels familiar. You reach out trembling. Your fingers brush the edge and the tablet hums, not loudly, more like the echo of a sound remembered. And with that echo comes something else, a name, yours, spoken not aloud but inward, as if your own memory were reciting it back to you in someone else's voice. You stumble back, heart pounding. Behind you the men whisper, but not in fear, in reverence. One kneels. Another presses his forehead to the stone floor. "Do you hear it?" one murmurs. You want to say no. You want to dismiss it, to label it a trick of sound and stone and pressure. But the truth is yes. You do hear something. A pulse, a call, a memory of a place you've never been. Outside, the air is thick with coming change. You emerge from the cave to find the sky darkened, not with clouds, but with something else. A haze, a shifting veil. The captain is on the beach waiting. You hadn't realized the day had passed, that the sun had fallen, that time had moved forward without permission. "What did you find?" he asks. You look at your sketchbook. The final page is not in your hand. It's missing, torn clean. You don't remember doing it. "A map," you whisper, "but not of this world." He narrows his eyes, not in disbelief, but calculation. "We make camp tonight," he says. "We'll decide what to do in the morning." You nod. "But you know already this place won't let you leave unchanged." The others return to the ship. You remain. Sitting on the rocks, watching stars you do not recognize blink into being. And somewhere far above, or perhaps deep within the sky, begins to draw lines of its own. By the time morning comes, if it is morning at all, you're no longer certain how time functions here. The sky, although faintly brighter than the night before, does not glow with the golden hues of dawn. Instead, it emits a pale bluish tone, diffused and cold, as if the light itself is hesitant, filtered through a memory, rather than radiating from a present source. The sun, when visible, has lost its sharpness, blurring at the edges, like ink soaked into parchment. You wonder absently if you've crossed not only into a place unknown, but into a when uncharted. The crew awakens, slowly, cautiously, speaking in hushed tones. There's a shared look in their eyes now. Uncertainty, yes, but also something deeper. A strange reverence. Last night's silence has calcified into ritual. No one jokes about hangovers. No one spits into the fire. Even the grizzled helmsman who once swore at the stars now gazes upward with the wary respect of a man who suspects he's being watched in return. You sit near the remnants of the fire, flipping through your notebook, and realize that the pages have shifted somehow. The sketches you made of the ruins, the stones, even the symbols seem more precise than you remember drawing them. The lines are straighter, the curvature cleaner, and on one page a map has appeared. Not drawn by your hand, but there nonetheless. It curls inward, spirals out again, and loops in a fashion that no real-world geography could allow. It breathes almost the way a reflection ripples when wind kisses water. You feel the temptation to tear the page out to cast it into the embers, but your fingers refuse. Somewhere within you, a voice you don't recognize murmurs, "This was meant for you." You rise before the others and return to the shoreline. The sea is wrong again. It reflects not the sky above, but some deeper image like the surface of a dream half forgotten. You peer into it, and for a moment swear you see the ship Santa Marta, whole and unbroken, sailing quietly upside down across the glassy surface. When you blink, it's gone. You crouch and dip your fingers into the water. It's warmer than it should be. Slick, almost oily, but not unpleasant. You draw back your hand and find faint ink-like stains across your fingertips. No matter how hard you scrub against your coat, they do not come off. Behind you, one of the men calls your name. It's the carpenter's son, João, a quiet youth no more than 17 who rarely speaks unless spoken to. His eyes are wide, his face pale. "I found it," he says. You approach him where he stands beneath a wind-twisted tree. At his feet lies a strange instrument half buried in ash-colored soil. It's made of brass, corroded but intact. You recognize it instantly, an astrolabe, but unlike any you've seen before. Its frame is circular, but instead of the usual star map, it bears a single black stone in the center, surrounded by smaller rotating discs, etched with unknown symbols. When you lift it, it feels heavier than expected. Solid. Weighted not just with metal, but meaning. "I heard it," João murmurs. A voice. Just a whisper. "It said to bring you here." You try to laugh it off, but the sound sticks in your throat. Later that day, you convene with the captain inside the cave where the glowing veins of mineral still pulse softly. You show him the astrolabe. He doesn't touch it. Instead, he asks a question you didn't expect. What if this island isn't on any map? Because it moves. You frown. Like an illusion. He shakes his head. Like a ship, you consider the possibility. If the island drifts not in a direction measurable by wind or current, but perhaps through time or perception, it would explain the failures of navigation, the compass trembling, the inconsistent reflections. You say as much aloud, and he nods gravely. There's an old tale, he says quietly, that Henry himself chased a map that redrew itself every century. A phantom cartography. Islands that blinked in and out of the world's knowing. He never found them. Or perhaps he did and never returned. You ask him then why he doesn't seem surprised. He smiles sad and distant. Because no map worth having is complete, and no truth worth knowing comes without cost. That night, the stars begin to shift. It starts with Orion. His belt twists slightly, the line no longer straight, but curved. Then Cassiopeia, usually shaped like a W, bends inward, forming a circle. You point it out to the other navigators, but none of them will look. One of them mutters, "They are not stars anymore. Not for us." You stay up all night, eyes wide, sketching constellations you've never seen and cannot name. One resembles a spiral staircase. Another, a map of veins like those in the human eye. Still, another looks like the ruins you discovered, drawn in burning light. When dawn comes, if it can be called, that you realize something else, the island has changed shape. You ascend a ridge where yesterday there was only flatness. A new path coils along its side, not formed by man, but by pressure, by shifting. As if the island is alive, listening, reacting. You climb it. At the summit, you find something carved into the rock. No monument, no sculpture, just a single word. You do not speak the language, but you know what it means. You feel it. Welcome. By now, the men are uneasy. Some begin to suggest departure. One claims he woke to find his boots filled with seaweed, though he'd left them above the tide line. Another swears he saw his own brother among the trees. his brother who drowned 3 years ago. You do not know how to argue with them. You agree to return to San Jorge and chart a course away from the island, if only to see whether escape is possible. The captain sets you to calculating latitude. You prepare the instruments, but they fail you. The quadrant's shadow falls nowhere. The compass spins, then stills, then spins again. Your maps curl at the edges as though rejecting ink, but the stars, those strange shifting stars, they still offer a path. You begin to chart a new course. Not west, not east, but inward. Not into land, but into layers, into the folds of something deeper than sea. One sailor watching you work asks, "Where does this line lead?" You look up from your sketch. "To the truth," you say. He nods. "Then we'll need a stronger hull." For the next 3 days, you work on repairing the ship, not from damage of waves or rot, but from fatigue, as if the vessel itself has grown weary of ordinary purpose. You reinforce the hull with timber, scavenged from the island wood that hums faintly when touched. You polish the brass fittings until they gleam like strange moons. You fit the sails with new stitching woven from some silvery vine the men found clinging to the rocks. At night, you dream of sailing not across water, but across thought, across memory, as if the ship is becoming something else, a vessel not merely for men, but for questions. On the 4th morning, when you finally raise the sail, it catches not wind, but something subtler. A pull, a flow, a directionless momentum. The island begins to shrink behind you, or so you believe until you look again and realize it isn't shrinking at all. You're not leaving, you're entering. The sky thickens above you. The stars blink out. The ocean grows translucent, then luminous. Below the hull, you see not fish, not coral, but lights, moving in patterns, forming sigils. A crewman whispers, "Are we in the sky?" Someone else responds, "No, beneath it." You stand at the prow notebook and hand the astrolabe around your neck like a talisman. You've abandoned the old maps. You chart by instinct now, by echo. You are no longer a navigator. You are being navigated, and the sea, whatever sea this now is, accepts your offering. There is no ceremony when you cross whatever threshold separates that island's shimmering border from the realm beyond it. No sudden sound, no splash, no wind-carved announcement from the sails. You feel it instead in the pit of your stomach. Not nausea, not vertigo, but something more elusive, the uncanny awareness that you are no longer on Earth as you understood it. It is not that the ocean has changed, but that your perception of what an ocean is, how it reflects, how it behaves, how it holds your ship aloft, has been rewritten mid-sentence, as if some unseen hand has torn out the old page of physics and replaced it with a far more poetic, far less forgiving draft. At first, it is subtle. The water beneath the San Jorge no longer ripples with wind, but gleams with interior light, a faint turquoise illumination that seems to emerge from fathoms below. The ship casts no reflection. The moon, when it appears, hangs too close, and its reflection beneath the keel pulses like a separate entity, entirely as though it were not a mirror, but a twin. The night sky ceases to be merely backdrop. It begins to move with the measured drifting rhythm of a living thing. You glimpse patterns in the stars' shapes that rearrange themselves as you look, sometimes repeating, sometimes distorting. The constellations you once trusted now resemble coiled scripts, glyphs written by an astronomer whose language has no alphabet, only intuition. And yet the crew obeys. They follow your charts, although the parchment is blank. They set course by your command, though your instructions are no longer measured in degrees or leagues, but in words like between and after the turning, and more cryptically, just beyond the breath of the last thought you had before sleep. They don't question you. Not anymore. The silence that once came from fear now grows from awe, and perhaps from resignation. The men no longer ask where you're going. They ask only when they'll know that they've arrived. Jerome the carpenter's son begins to carve symbols into the ship's railing. Not words, though some appear almost like letters, but patterns you've seen before. From the cave, from the strange astrolabe, from your dreams. He tells you he doesn't know why he's doing it. The patterns just arrive fully formed, and his hands move of their own accord. You believe him. The captain, for his part, does not pretend to command anymore. He stands at the stern, arms crossed, looking backward as though trying to remember where you began. Sometimes he whispers to himself, not prayers, but phrases like the forgotten tide and port of returning. And once more, curiously, this is the voyage after life. Below deck, the men sleep more than usual, not out of fatigue, but necessity. The dreams, they say, are stronger than waking. One claims he walked along the ocean floor and was handed a pearl that held music inside it. Another awoke shouting that his twin brother dead at birth had spoken to him from beneath the hatch, asking when he would come home. You try to remain grounded in your duties. You maintain the logs, though the ink runs strangely on the pages, now sometimes forming curves you didn't draw. You keep the astrolabe wrapped in cloth, though it grows warmer each time you hold it. You track the stars, though they now seem to orbit your ship, not the earth. Most of all, you try to chart. You try to map this ever-shifting realm into lines and symbols, but the sea will not let you. Every night, the map you draw has changed by morning. Not altered, but rewritten. The coastlines curl into themselves. The islands move. One shaped like an open hand becomes a spiral by dawn. Another disappears entirely. Once a phrase appears across the chart in charcoal, you didn't use, you were here before. You stop trying to fix the maps. Instead, you begin recording feelings, not positions, not distances, but moods. This region feels warm with grief. Here, the sky tightens like regret. Sails drift easier in the tone of wonder. It's absurd. You know it. But it works. The ship follows your intuition, as if it were a wind itself. Then comes the night, when you hear it, a sound, not made by man, or sea, or sky. A note deep and resonant, like the tolling of a bell submerged beneath leagues of memory. It comes from below, from beneath the hull, not as vibration, but as reminder. And with it comes a shift. The ocean beneath you no longer appears as water at all. It is glass, yes, but not our kind. Not Earth's glass. It doesn't reflect so much as show you something else. When you look down now, you see corridors, halls, chambers lit with lanterns that do not burn. You see people walking through them, some dressed as sailors, others in robes, and some in clothing you cannot name. You shout for the captain. He sees them too. "What is this?" you whisper. He closes his eyes and replies without hesitation. "A ship larger than any we've built. A memory of a fleet that was never launched." You believe him. The next morning, if it is morning at all, you discover the compass. The one you wore around your neck has changed. Its needle no longer points north. Instead, it turns slowly in a circle, as though dragging itself along the edge of something unseen. You pin it down and trace the needle's movement across paper. The shape it forms is a spiral endlessly turning inward, like the island's ruins, like the carved stone, like the stars. Jerome stares at the pattern and mutters, "We're not lost, we're being remembered." That phrase haunts you. What does it mean to be remembered by a place? Can geography recall? Can oceans mourn what they once held? You begin to wonder if this voyage is not discovery at all, but return, then the event. You call it that because no better word fits. It begins with silence, but not the natural kind. This is a silence that flattens thought, that smooths the inside of your skull. It presses in from every direction. Even the creak of the ship vanishes. The sails hang still, the sea utterly flat, and the sky above you is gone. There is no color, no cloud, no stars, just a void so absolute it threatens to erase perception itself. And then light, not from above, but from within. The ship glows. Every beam, every rope, every nail radiates gently. You look at your hands. They shine. Juan glows like a lantern. The captain is lit from beneath the skin, like sunlight shining through a finger. And then the stars return, but not above. Below, the sea is now a sky inverted. Galaxies swirl beneath your keel. Planets drift lazily across coral-colored fog. You see moons the size of cathedrals, spinning slowly in silence. One of them cracks open like a pomegranate, revealing cities within. No one speaks. One sailor drops to his knees, then to his stomach, pressing his face against the deck. Not in fear, but in worship. You lower the astrolabe again, and this time it spins freely. The central stone pulses gently, and the markings rearrange themselves as you watch. And now, something approaches. Not a creature, not a ship, a shape. Triangular but shifting. As large as a mountain, drifting slowly toward you from the star ocean below. It bears symbols on its surface, vast runes that shift like clouds. You hear them, though no sound is made. They speak in intention and resonance. The captain grips your shoulder. Speak to it, he says. I don't know how. You already are. You step forward to the prow. You hold the astrolabe high. You close your eyes, and you feel it. Not thought, not words, but knowledge. This was once a port. Not a physical one, but a harbor for wayward minds, for navigators lost not at sea, but in understanding. A place drawn not on maps, but in memory. A sanctuary between what is and what could never have been. You are shown images not with eyes, but with comprehension. The first ships that broke through the veil. The first sailors who tried to draw maps of possibility. Some returned changed. Others remained as archivists. Not dead. Not alive. Preserved in myth. You are not being guided anymore. You are being admitted. The star sea shimmers. The shape begins to turn away. Your ship follows. You don't order it. The sails move. The rudder shifts. The ocean parts. You pass beneath an arch of light, an aperture formed by two curving moons locked in orbit. The ship shudders, then settles. Behind you, the real sea closes. Before you, a new map unfurls, not on paper, but in your mind. And for the first time, you realize this voyage never began when you left Sagres. It began when you first wondered whether the stars lied. And now, you will find out why. Sleep does not come easily anymore. Not because you are restless, but because sleep has begun to resemble waking. And waking feels increasingly like a memory retold by someone else. Each time your eyes close, you're taken not into dream, but into continuation of charting, of navigation, of gliding through places that have no name, and yet feel intensely familiar, like corridors you once ran down as a child, but cannot place within any real building. And when you open your eyes again, the São Jorge has moved, and always, always, the stars beneath you have rearranged themselves. You cannot say how many days have passed. Time has softened, blurred, melted. You try to mark it by meals, but the food dwindles without explanation. The bread remains soft. The dried fish never sours. The water barrel refills despite being drained. At first, you suspect the crew of rationing behind your back. But then João shows you the moss. It grows below deck, now pale silver green, clinging to beams and barrels, exuding a sweet, damp scent. When boiled, it forms a broth that stills the stomach and sharpens the mind. No one remembers collecting it. No one planted it. It simply appeared growing in the places you needed it most. One night, you find a line of it curling along your journal's spine, like a bookmark left by something unseen. You begin to write not with ink, but with the burnt ends of this moss, and it glows faintly in the dark, etching your entries in dim green that lingers like phosphorescence. You no longer record miles, tides, or stars. Now you document moods, sensations, shadows that pass across the deck at twilight, things no one sees but all feel. And then without ceremony, the island appears again. Not the first one with its black soil and carved stones, but another further inward, deeper. It's visible not ahead, not beside, but somehow below. You lean over the rail and see it inverted in the mirror sea. Trees that look like coral, lights in towers without windows, the color of the soil amber veined with copper. The entire landmass appears upside down, like a reflection of a world too perfect to be real. The crew gathers murmuring. No one shouts, no one points. It is simply there. Your ship, moving on its own, begins to descend. Yes, descend. You feel no drop, no jolt, no panic. The sea accepts you, turning inside out. The air grows thicker, not with pressure, but meaning. Every breath feels like an inhalation of memory. Every exhale a release of questions you hadn't known to ask. And as the São Jorge lowers into this inverted aisle, the light shifts again, not dimmer, not brighter, but older. You dock at a shore made not of sand, but a lattice of polished bone and petrified wood. The grain of the trees shows knots shaped like eyes. Some open when touched. Others hum beneath your palm, like a heartbeat slowed to the tempo of eternity. João refuses to disembark. He claims he heard voices calling from the tide, not in words, but in questions. What did you lose? What did you forget to become? Which version of yourself are you willing to leave behind? You don't answer. You step ashore. The captain follows barefoot, his coat discarded, his eyes bare of fear. The path that winds from the shoreline leads through a forest without leaves, branches draped in fine golden thread. When the wind stirs them, yes, wind for the first time in what feels like weeks, they chime like distant bells, and with each chime comes a memory. Not yours, someone else's. A child watching her father vanish into fog, an old sailor kissing a locket before dropping it into the sea, a cartographer burning a map in the rain, not out of anger, but love. You begin to understand this place stores remembrance, not in stone or script, but in sound, in gesture, in experience. It is a library, but one that writes in scent and touch and dreams. Deeper in, you find the structure. A domed tower rising from the roots of an impossibly large tree, so wide it eclipses the sky. The entrance is not guarded. It does not need to be. Inside, the walls are carved with maps, not of territory, but of possibility. You see a version of the world in which the Americas were never discovered, where Africa remained untouched by European ships. Another, where Atlantis never sank. A third, where the seas themselves rose, swallowed the coastlines, and left only those who sailed in search of meaning. At the center of the chamber floats a globe, not suspended by rope or chain, or any visible mechanism, but by thought alone. As you approach it, tilts toward you. Your fingers reach out, trembling, expectant. It stops spinning and reveals a continent, one you've never seen, and yet you recognize it. The mountains are arranged in the shape of the constellation you dreamt of 3 nights ago. The rivers trace the lines you saw in João's carvings. The coastline resembles the looped glyph on the brass astrolabe's base. You place your hand upon it. The room darkens. You are shown your life not in flashes, not in scenes, but in paths. Roads you did not take, choices unmade. One thread shows you as a teacher in Lisbon, never joining the fleet. Another lost at sea during the storm, remembered only as a name on a forgotten list. A third, maddeningly strange, shows you building ships of bone in a place beneath the tide. You pull your hand back. The globe continues spinning. The captain touches your shoulder. They call this the Archive of Roots, he says, voice barely audible. Each traveler leaves a version of themselves here. Only one may return. Return, you whisper. If you choose, he says, and walks away. Outside, the crew waits in reverent silence. Some cry, others laugh. One is sketching symbols in the dirt with a finger eyes vacant. You climb back aboard the São Jorge. The moss has grown thicker. The sails now shimmer with threads you don't remember weaving. The wood is darker, denser, as though absorbing everything you learn. That night, you dream again, not of places, but of names. You dream of an older version of yourself, with silver in your beard telling children about the voyage to a land you could never prove existed. And when you wake, you speak the name aloud, the name of the island, the name that you knew but had forgotten until now. Antilara. João jerks awake. He speaks the name too. It was on the old maps, he says, before they were edited, before they decided the world had limits. You look to the captain. He nods. Then we plot it. You unroll new parchment. The quill moves without ink. The lines flow not from your memory, but from something else, something deeper. A map that draws itself. When you finish, you pin it to the deck. The crew gathers. The island is gone. The stars return. The water glistens. You look again at your map. There it is, Antilara, a place that should not exist, and yet there it lies waiting to be found again, not by others, by you, again and again, forever. It begins with forgetting, not in the casual sense, the way one forgets where they've left a knife or which day of the week it is, but a more profound erasure, a soft hollowing out. You awaken one morning, if it can still be called that, and for a moment cannot remember your mother's face. Not her smile, not her laugh, not even the shade of her hair in sunlight. You try to recall it, to reach backward across the fabric of your memory, but the thread unravels before you can grasp it. In its place is something else, the shape of Antilara, as it floated beneath the keel. The way its amber sands gleamed with a light not born of any sun. The scent of the moss growing beneath the quarterdeck spiced like cedar and salt. João forgets next. He tells you he can no longer remember his own age. When asked, he offers numbers 17, then 19, then shrugs. The cook forgets how to prepare his favorite dish, though the ingredients sit ready in his hands. One of the older crewmen wakes in panic because he can't remember whether his wife had a birthmark on her cheek or her collarbone. Then he forgets whether she existed at all. The captain remains calm through it all. He begins keeping a journal, but not for himself. He writes each page in a looped tight script and nails them to the ship's mast for all to see. They contain reminders. We are aboard the São Jorge. We departed from Sagres. The year was 1433. You are real. This is not punishment. This is passage. You begin to write your own notes, 2 folded scraps tucked into your pockets, carved into the wood near your hammock, etched into your arms with ink. You are a navigator. You have a name. This is not madness. It is unfolding. Trust the tide, because the tide is changing, not in the simple rhythm of rise and fall, but in intention. The water moves differently now. It no longer laps against the ship with the indifference of weather. It seems to carry the ship, not push, not pull, but bear, like a procession, like a cradle, and then the sky splits. It happens without thunder, without wind. One moment, the sky is whole, a dome of shifting constellations. The next, it tears along a single line of shadow, and from it pours not light, but color. Not the colors you know. Colors without name. Hues that seem to exist only for the brief moment you perceive them, then vanish as though ashamed to remain. Through that rift comes sound not booming or sharp, but low and harmonic. A chord without origin, yet so resonant it vibrates through your ribs. The crew drops to their knees. One begins to weep. Another Juon starts singing softly, tunelessly. A lullaby, maybe, or a prayer in a tongue no one has taught him. You don't kneel. You walk to the prow and raise the astrolabe. It reacts instantly. The brass glows. The black stone at its center begins to spin faster and faster until it vanishes into a blur. The instrument lifts from your hands. It hovers in the air before you, spinning in place, then shatters silently into 1,000 tiny brass flakes, which spiral upward and vanish into the light. The crew gasps. Someone shouts that you've destroyed it, but you know better. It has gone home. The captain places a hand on your shoulder. Do you see it? You look forward. Beyond the prow, through the rift, there is a city in the sky. It floats suspended in nothingness, built from towers of crystal and metal and bone. Bridges hang between them like thread glinting with starlight. At the base of the city is an inverted dome pulsing slowly, like a massive heart made of glass. Around it swarm figures, not birds, not ships, not stars, but shapes. Some humanoid, others less so. They circle the dome in slow, reverent spirals. The city is not real. You know that. It is not false either. It is something else, an offering, a reflection, a truth shaped to be understood, a translation of the unknowable into a language your soul can comprehend. We are not meant to land there, you whisper. No, the captain replies. But we are meant to pass through it. The city opens, like a flower, like a book. The towers bend outward, forming a corridor of light. The sea beneath you shimmers. The ship moves forward, sails catching a wind that does not exist. You pass into the corridor, and everything changes. The ship begins to rise, not violently, not abruptly, but with grace. The boards creak, not in protest, but in release. The sails flutter with joy. The ropes strain upward, as though yearning to ascend. You look over the rail and see nothing below. No ocean, no stars, just mist, thick and pale and warm, like breath, like memory, like forgiveness. The crew stands in silence. One man removes his boots, another his hat. Juon clutches your arm, eyes wide, not with fear, but with awe. I remember now, he says. What? I was never born. I was chosen. You do not understand. Not fully, but you accept it. You reach the center of the city, if it can be called that, and everything halts. The ship slows, the wind dies, the light dims. You are suspended. Between moments, between thoughts, between what was and what must now become. And in that silence you hear it, a voice, not from outside, from within. It says only this: choose, and you understand. You must choose whether to continue forward, deeper into this place, into understanding, into transformation, or to return. Not to Portugal, not to 1433, but to the known, to certainty, to linearity, to a world where the sea has limits and the stars obey rules. You look at the crew. Some are already turning away, walking back toward their hammocks, their journals, their memories of home. Others stare ahead, tears on their cheeks. You turn to the captain. What will you do? He smiles. I've seen what I needed to. That's enough. You close your eyes and step forward. The ship responds. It begins to turn slowly, gently back toward the mist, back toward the sea that dreams, and you no longer a navigator, no longer a boy with a compass, become something else. Not a sailor, not a dreamer, but a map. a living, breathing map of all that might be, and behind you, etched into the keel of the São Jorge, the moss writes one final phrase: "You are the direction now." You awaken not to the creak of wood or the lapping of water, but to the absence of both an unfamiliar stillness that presses upon your chest like a dense woolen shroud. The air is neither warm nor cold. It exists in that in-between temperature, which when you try to name it, slips from your grasp like a fading recollection. You blink your eyes open. The light here is soft but untraceable, diffused not from a single source, but seemingly from the space itself, as though illumination is now a property of atmosphere rather than of sun or flame. You sit up slowly, and it takes you a moment to recognize where you are. The planks beneath your fingers are familiar, the deck of the São Jorge varnished with salt, pressed down by centuries of intention. But the sea surrounding the ship has changed. It no longer rolls or ripples. It rests. It is not glass, not ice, not even mist. It is thought flattened and endless, stretching in every direction, with neither horizon nor curvature. The sky above mirrors it exactly. You are afloat, not on water, but on a concept stillness so profound that motion becomes an act of memory rather than physics. The ship is whole, even beautiful. Its sails, though lowered, hang in perfect arcs like sleeping wings. Every line of rigging has been polished, every nail set flush. Someone or something has tended to the vessel in your absence. The moss still grows, but now it forms deliberate patterns across the railing, curling in spirals and glyphs, too complex to be decorative, yet too elegant to be functional. You follow one trail with your eyes and find it forms a map, not of geography, but of time. The loops and swirls depict phases, not places, versions of events, alternate endings. Below deck, the crew stirs. João is already awake, seated cross-legged on the floor beside the helm hands, cupped around a small bowl of the moss broth. He doesn't speak at first, merely nods to you as if to say, "You made it back too." You nod in return and descend to the cabin, where the others are rousing with the slow reverence of monks emerging from a long vigil. No one asks what time it is. Time no longer governs the voyage. They speak in terms of feeling. It feels like the third rest. We're past the red light. The ship has turned again. The captain appears not long after. His beard is longer now, streaked with salt and ash, and he wears no uniform. Instead, he is robed in something like linen, but interwoven with fine silver threads that glint when he moves. He carries no sword, no chart, no instrument, only a single object, a small round stone, black and smooth, with an iridescent line down its center, like an eyelid halfway open. "Gather on deck," he says, and his voice is calm, melodic, woven with something deeper than command suggestion, braided with certainty. The crew ascends. You stand near the helm as the captain places the stone at the ship's bow, setting it in a carved recess that had not existed the day before. When it rests in place, it emits a pulse, not light, not sound, but presence. A thrum that passes through your ribs and settles behind your sternum. The sea does not react. The sky remains still. But something within the ship stirs. João acknowledges sharply. "She's waking," he whispers. The ship moves. Not forward, not backward. It shifts as if remembering itself into a new position. Around you, the world bends slightly, like parchment, curling from the warmth of a candle's breath. And then, as if the curling continues inward, you pass through something, a ripple, a soft cracking, and suddenly you are elsewhere. Now the sea is made of stars, genuine burning stars, and the sky above you is blacker than pitch, but not empty. Shapes move above it, geometries that turn slowly, interlocking rings of fire and shadow, that move without sound, casting no light but great significance. The ship floats on this sea of constellations, drifting between suns and memories. It should burn. It should collapse. But it does not. The wood remains solid. The sails remain full. You begin to understand. The ship is no longer a vessel of exploration. It is an interface. A bridge. The captain gestures toward the mast. It has changed. Where once there was canvas and rope, now there is a map etched into the very wood. Not carved, but grown. As if the mast has become aware of where it is and has decided to assist. You trace it with your fingers. The destinations are not labeled by name. They are feelings. One node radiates peace. Another pulses with curiosity. A third, deeper, darker, shivers with warning. We choose now, the captain says. No more following winds. The ship moves where we tell her. And if we choose wrong, one sailor asks. There are no wrong paths, the captain replies, only longer stories. You look again at the map and feel your hand drawn to the darker route. It promises no comfort, but something more precious, clarity. You touch it. The mast hums. The sails rise. The ship turns. You pass once more through layers, through seas of silence, through skies that whisper, through winds that echo back your thoughts before you can speak them aloud. And then you arrive. It is not a place. It is a memory of a place. A harbor carved into the side of a mountain that no longer exists. The water is red, not with blood, but with light, as though the sun has descended into it. Great statues rise from the depths, half buried, their faces serene and sorrowful. The ruins stretch across the bay, each building crumbling upward, as if they were being rebuilt in reverse. You drop anchor. You disembark. You are not alone. They await you, figures humanoid, but indistinct, stand at the edges of the ruins. Their features shift slightly, as though they are trying to appear familiar, but haven't chosen which memories to use yet. One steps forward and places a hand on your chest, not threatening, not demanding, but asking. You understand. Show us what you have seen. You open your journal. They do not look. They read, not with eyes, not with language, but with presence. Your memories spill into them. The storm, the black island, the astrolabe, the city in the sky, the moment you chose to return. All of it flows out of you, not as a loss, but as a gift. They accept it, and then they give you something in return. Not knowledge, not a vision, a burden, a sense of weight in your chest, an understanding so vast and so delicate that words cannot hold it. You fall to your knees. The ruins vanish. The Red Sea dissolves. You are on the deck again. Zhuang helps you stand. What did they give you? He asks. You whisper. A map. He frowns. Of where? Of why. Later that night, you unroll parchment and begin to draw. But the lines do not follow geography. They follow decisions. They chart not lands, but beliefs. Not distance, but doubt. Each line you draw connects a choice to a consequence, a silence to a revelation. When the map is complete, it resembles a mind unraveling. And in its center is a single word drawn without thought. Return. You don't remember writing it. The captain approaches. It's time, he says. You nod. The ship turns once more. This time you pass back through the stillness, back into water, back into tide. The stars return to the sky above, rather than below. The wind grows real again. The sails billow. The helm responds to your touch. Sagres lies ahead, though far still. And you know it won't be the same. It shouldn't be, because you are the same only until you understand what more means. You walk the deck, hand trailing the rail, and behind you, where the moss once curled, you see a phrase growing slowly in living script. Not all explorers seek land. You do not know how long it takes to reach the outermost veil of that deeper ocean, nor can you say how many layers of perception have folded and unfolded in your journey since choosing to return. Time once a current by which you measured distance and movement has melted into something more like rhythm pulses of memory, echoes of intention, verses of experience that repeat themselves with subtle variation, like a sailor's song, altered by each man who sings it. And so, when the ship finally crests a wave that feels real in the sense that it is pushed by wind and not by thought, you notice it not because of the physics, but because of the weight. You feel your body settle. Gravity resumes its claim. The deck no longer levitates beneath your feet, but presses gently upward with the familiar resistance of wood and craftsmanship. The wind no longer speaks in questions. It hums with direction. The sails fill not with destiny, but with air. Real salt-tinged air. You lean over the rail and see a surface below undulating, vast, imperfect. The sea is flawed again. Its perfection has been broken by returning. You have made it back to the natural world, or something that resembles it closely enough to pretend. But you are not the same, nor is the ship. The São Jorge, once merely a vessel of Portuguese oak and sailcloth, has become a living record of your journey. Its hull bears marks not made by weather or battle, but by insight lines and symbols that glow faintly in the dusk, like embers that refuse to die. The mast has grown an inner grain that shifts subtly under moonlight, as though remembering each course you charted in your mind. The ropes coil and knot themselves in patterns too elegant for coincidence, and when the wind moves through them, they sing. Not loudly, not tunefully, but in a way that matches your breath, your step, your thoughts. And the crew changed every one of them. João, once wide-eyed and anxious, now walks the deck with a calm born, not of answers, but of having accepted the right questions. He no longer counts days. He carves instead. The railing now bears a repeating design, spirals nested within loops circles, joined by invisible lines that forms a continuous pattern, as if the ship is wrapped in a riddle written in wood. The cook no longer speaks, not out of trauma, but because he listens. Every evening he sits cross-legged by the bowhead, tilted, as if hearing voices rising from the brine. Sometimes he nods, sometimes he weeps. Once you found him laughing, eyes closed, hands pressed to his ears, as if holding in music too beautiful to repeat. And the captain, he no longer gives orders. Instead, he consults the ship itself, pressing his hand to the mast, watching the way the sails lean, the shadows fall. The wind speaks. His role has shifted from commander to interpreter. He reads the ship like a scripture. And you are no longer navigator. You are witness. But witness to what? That is the question you begin to ask as land finally appears, not as a shining answer, but as a shadow on the edge of understanding. At first, it seems like any coast, craggy, rough, familiar. A headland you might have once charted, dismissed, passed by. But as the São Jorge approaches, you begin to notice details that unsettle you. There is a harbor, yes, but the stone jetty is broken in a way you remember. A signal tower stands on the cliff, its roof collapsed in the same shape you once sketched in your apprentice years. A windmill leans inland with a jagged blade identical to the one that collapsed in a storm when you were 13. And then you see the city. It's not Sagres, but it is. The angles are wrong. The building's taller than memory allows. The colors bolder, yet faded. Streets wind in different paths, yet you know their names before you read the signs. It is Sagres after you left it, shaped by absence, rebuilt by memory, changed by all the stories you've carried back. This place has become a translation of home into the language of transformation. The crew lowers anchor in silence. The captain looks at you. Go, he says. You know the way. You step into the longboat and row ashore. The tide is gentle. The city greets you not with fanfare, not with welcome banners or brass trumpets, but with recognition. As your boots touch stone, the very ground seems to breathe. Windows blink open. Doors shift slightly. Dust lifts from cobblestones like old breath, and the air tastes familiar, not in flavor, but in emotion. You are not home. You are in a dream of it, the one you held in your mind during long nights in alien waters, shaped by longing and adjusted by hope. As you walk deeper into the city, people appear, not crowds, just individuals. Some pass silently, faces averted. Others look directly at you with the solemn gaze of those who understand. You pass a woman tending to vines that grow across the facade of a tavern that bears no name. She hums a tune that turns into your childhood lullaby. A boy chases a wooden hoop down a stone stair, but the hoop rolls in perfect spirals, never faltering, never stopping, as if magnetized to the shape of your thoughts. You turn a corner and stop short. There, sitting on a bench in the shadow of an orange tree, is your master, not aged, not changed, exactly as he was. He looks up from the parchment in his lap and smiles. "I wondered how far you'd go," he says. You sit beside him. He offers you the parchment. It is blank. "You'll need to draw it," he adds. They always do eventually. "I don't know how you say." "You already did," he replies. "Now you must decide what to remember." You close your eyes, and the images rise. Antilara, the inverted city, the sea that reflected stars, the stone that pulsed, the voice that whispered, "Choose." You see João singing to nothing, the ship humming beneath your feet, the astrolabe vanishing into gold dust. You remember the map drawn by the moss, the glyphs that curled across the captain's hand, the reflection that was not yours, but still knew your name. You remember everything. You open your eyes and begin to draw. This time, you do not hesitate. You do not measure. You do not calculate angles or note cardinal points. You draw curves, loops, pulses. You draw emotions. You chart belief. The page fills slowly with forms that seem unintelligible until you step back and realize they tell a story not of where you went, but of what it meant. You hand the parchment back to your master. He nods and fades, not into mist, into memory. You are alone, but only briefly, because when you walk back to the dock, the São Jorge is there, as is the crew. They do not speak. The ship shimmers in the light of a sun that seems to have just been born. You climb aboard. The captain does not ask where you've been. He simply hands you a new journal, blank, untouched. You open it, and the first page writes itself. Begin again. You close the cover. The anchor is lifted. The wind shifts. The sails rise. And the ship, humming softly, turns toward a horizon you can no longer see, but have always known. If there is a word for the kind of voyage that begins, not with departure, but with remembrance, it has not yet been spoken aloud by any sailor born of earth and bone. Yet that is the voyage you now find yourself upon. The moment the São Jorge turns once more to the open sea, sails heavy with a wind that no longer arrives from any fixed direction, you understand that what lies ahead is not simply another leg of a journey begun in Sagres, nor a return to the secrets of Antilara or the mirrored city above the starlit ocean. It is something stranger, something deeper, a voyage into after revelation, after return, after choice. And as the days, or what pass for days, begin to unfurl once more like scrolls from the gods' private archive, you come to notice a peculiar shift in the very fabric of experience. Where once the ship responded to natural elements, wind current tide, it now seems to move by consensus. The mood of the crew, the clarity of your thoughts, even the pattern of João's carvings on the rail seem to play a role in determining the ship's direction. One afternoon, after you pass an hour in deep contemplation near the prow, the ship tilts almost imperceptibly to port, sails ripple in agreement, and a new current seizes the hull with the gentleness of a mother guiding her child by the elbow. The captain nods, as if this is all expected. You have become less a navigator and more a conduit, no longer deciding but allowing, no longer calculating but listening. And as you surrender to that state, your perception begins to expand in subtle, often disorienting ways. You begin to recognize the voices of the ship's timbers, not in language, but in vibration. When you place your hand on the mast and close your eyes, you can feel the history of each plank, the storm it weathered the salt. It has absorbed the prayers whispered into its grain by frightened sailors. Even the nails speak, though their language is ancient and metallic, like chimes struck beneath a frozen sea. The men on board are changing too, not in appearance, though. Many have grown leaner, paler, quieter, but in how they carry themselves. João now speaks only in riddles. The cook no longer cooks. Instead, he composes silent rituals with his hands moving spices and dried herbs in circles on the galley table, forming patterns that resemble maps or diagrams, or perhaps memories. One sailor has taken to writing messages on scraps of canvas, tying them to the rigging, and watching them flutter like omens. He never reads them afterward, as though the act of expression itself is sufficient. Another man who once feared storms more than death now stands at the stern, every twilight, arms wide, eyes closed, welcoming whatever arrives next with a serenity bordering on devotion. You begin recording your observations, not in your old journal. It is full now, the final pages soaked with seawater that smells faintly of lilac and smoke, but on loose vellum sheets that appear in your satchel without explanation. Each morning, new parchment awaits you, rolled and tied with thread, the color of faded sky. You accept the offering, and you write, not always in words, sometimes in diagrams, sometimes in music. Once you wrote an entire entry, using only the curve of waves as punctuation, no letters, just rhythm. The ship enters a region unlike any you have seen before. The sea grows pale, almost milky, and the sky takes on a dull orange hue that does not change no matter the hour. There is no night here, but there is still darkness. Long shadows cast by clouds that do not move by light, that seems to come from beneath the water rather than above it. The horizon fades, and soon the distinction between sea and sky becomes not blurred, but irrelevant. The São Jorge moves as though through fog, but there is no moisture, only opacity, only uncertainty. And within that uncertainty, shapes begin to emerge, not islands exactly, not land masses, but presences. They rise from the water without warning, towering structures of stone and crystal, and something that resembles petrified wood, their surfaces etched with glyphs that shift depending on your angle of view. From one direction, a spire may display the face of a man you once knew. From another, the same spire reveals a pattern resembling the muscles of a bird in flight, or the root system of a tree uprooted by wind. The ship drifts among these monuments slowly, reverently, as if aware it is being watched. You disembark at one of them alone. The captain does not stop you. The crew simply parts, and you lower a rope ladder and descend into a skiff that rocks gently on the still water. You row toward the nearest structure, a column so tall it vanishes into the fog above its base, submerged beneath water that does not ripple. As you draw near, your reflection in the sea splits into two. One continues to mimic your movements. The other remains still watching you with quiet judgment. The base of the monument is inscribed with text. You recognize the letters, though not the language. You reach out, trace the first character with your fingertips, and feel a surge of warmth as though the stone has acknowledged you. And then, suddenly, you remember a time that never occurred. You are aboard a different ship, younger, braver, with the arrogance of a boy who believes stars cannot lie. You are charting the west coast of Africa, and you stumble upon a tiny, unmarked bay. You land. You meet a woman who lives alone in a house of reeds and tells you of maps that draw themselves during dreams. She gives you a fruit with skin like silver and tells you to eat it before you sleep. You never do. You sail away. But now here, you remember the taste. Sweet, but also salt. Bitter at the end. Like time, you blink. The memory fades, but the sensation remains. Your hand drops from the stone. You look around and realize there are dozens of other skiffs docked around the monument. Empty. This is a place where sailors leave parts of themselves. You return to the ship with a feeling like exhaustion, but not of the body, of the soul. As if something inside you has bent slightly under its own weight and now requires quiet in order to recover. Back on deck, Joan greets you with a bowl of the moss broth. You drink without question. It tastes different, earthier, darker. He tells you the moss has changed color. It is now tinged with violet, and it hums softly when squeezed. That night, as you lie in your hammock, you dream not of places, but of people. The crew, the captain, yourself, but different. You see a version of the São Jorge crewed entirely by children, curious, silent, endlessly patient. You see another version in which every sailor bears your face, but each speaks a different language. You see a ship where you are the mast, another where you are the storm. You wake with a start and find the ship has stopped, dead calm, but not in danger, in expectation. Before you, something rises from the mist, a structure, massive, ancient, unfinished, not ruined in progress. Its arches are still forming. Its columns rise slowly like teeth from a dreaming god. And in the center there is a platform, circular, wide enough for a single ship to dock. You steer the São Jorge toward it. There is no resistance. The ship glides in as if drawn by gravity of purpose. You lower anchor. It holds fast. The crew disembarks with you, all of them one by one in silence. You ascend the platform. In its center stands a table. Upon the table a map, blank. But as you all gather, something begins to form. The captain steps forward, places a hand on the surface. A city appears, not one you recognize, but one that could be. João steps forward. A forest grows from the city's edge. The cook touches it. Paths appear between the trees, winding and curved. You approach. The map pulses. It waits. You place your hand, and the sea appears. Not the one you sailed. The one you might sail. The one you have yet to invent. And beside it names. Dozens. Hundreds. None of them yours. Until you find one. In a corner. Small. Faint. But it flickers. And you understand. This is not the end of your voyage. This is the invitation. To begin again. But differently. To draw not from memory, but from imagination. To sail not to find, but to create. The map rises, floats, dissolves into light. The platform vanishes. You are on the ship once more. But this time no one waits. No one asks. They watch you. And you raise the sail. Not because wind calls you. Because you choose to move toward the world you have not yet dreamed. As the São Jorge sails onward from the platform, if indeed it ever truly left it, the sea returns. Yet it does so, not with the mindless constancy of the Atlantic you once knew, but with an intentionality that feels almost curated. The waves rise and fall in patterns that echo the rhythm of thought. The wind arrives not to drive the ship forward by force, but to test the integrity of your will. Each gust is a question, each shift in tide, a suggestion, as though the elements themselves have become interlocutors in a conversation you are only now learning to understand. You find yourself spending more time alone now, not out of fear or alienation, but because solitude has taken on a sacred quality. The others feel it too. João sits in the crow's nest for hours, cross-legged, head bowed, whispering softly, as if reciting instructions he does not wish to forget. The cook, whose words have grown fewer and further between, has taken to sketching in charcoal along the galley's ceiling. Spirals, eyes, shapes that seem to pulse when viewed from the corner of the eye. Even the captain, once ever present and authoritative, now walks with a kind of reverent detachment, as though observing a ritual only he remembers, but can no longer name. And you write. But the writing has changed. The pages no longer contain the daily logs of weather and stars, provisions, and headings. Instead, they hold something more fluid. You write of feelings as if they were locations of memories, as if they were distances. You describe the taste of starlight, the weight of silence, the texture of anticipation. You map dreams. You chart regrets. You record the inflection of the wind when it carries the scent of a place you once imagined, but never truly believed could exist. One night, you are awoken not by a sound, but by its absence. The usual creak of the ship, the flap of canvas, the gentle hiss of wake against hull, all of it gone. You step onto the deck and are met by a scene that defies logic, yet feels more real than anything you've known. The sea is gone, not replaced, not evaporated, simply absent. Beneath the ship lies not water, but a field of stars, so vast, so intimate, that you can see your reflection in them, not your face, but your soul rendered in constellations and orbital arcs. Above you, the sky is likewise strewn with galaxies, nebulae, and twin moons that do not mirror each other, but orbit slowly, casting long elliptical shadows across the deck. The São Jorge floats, suspended in nothing and everything all at once. You walk to the helm and place your hand on the wheel. It responds not with motion, but with understanding. You feel your own thoughts ripple outward from the center of your chest, echoing through the mast, the sails, the hull. The ship is no longer a vehicle. It is a mirror, a collaborator, a question, and it is asking you, where shall we go now? You do not answer aloud. You close your eyes and you feel. You think of the island that was not on any map. You think of the astrolabe now dissolved into memory. You think of the domed archive that offered you the map of why. You think of Sagres not as it was, but as it might become. And slowly, gently, the ship begins to turn. Not east, not west, not toward any cardinal direction you could mark with a compass, but inward. The stars below begin to shift. You realize now that they are not stars in the traditional sense, but stories. Each one a flicker of meaning, a single page in an infinite book of possibilities. As you sail over them, you see glimpses, brief vignettes rising from the stardust like flames caught in crystal. A girl alone on a pier whispering a secret to a bottle before casting it into the tide. A soldier laying down his weapon to build a lighthouse out of broken helmets. An old cartographer tearing up every map he ever made and feeding the pieces to birds. These are not visions granted by some mystical force. They are echoes, fragments of choices that drift freely, now unanchored by time. João appears beside you. We're in the sea of stories, he says, voice hushed. You nod. You know this without being told. He hands you a book not blank, but unfinished. Your name is on the cover. You open it. The pages contain your journey from Sagres to now. But there is more entries written in a hand, not your own, describing events that have not yet occurred. Destinations you have yet to encounter, revelations you have yet to endure. You read one aloud. In the place where the ocean forgets itself, you will be asked to give up your name. Not because it is unworthy, but because names cannot hold what you are becoming. You close the book. The São Jorge slows. Ahead lies a shoreline, if it can be called that. It curves upward into the sky, made not of sand or rock, but of memory. It shimmers with forgotten colors and pulses gently like a heartbeat wrapped in fog. You disembark alone, the crew watching silently. Your feet touch ground, but there is no sensation of weight. The world here is soft, yielding, receptive. You walk without destination, drawn forward by something deeper than curiosity, deeper even than calling. You come to a clearing. At its center stands a figure, not cloaked, not veiled, simply indistinct. You recognize yourself in its posture. It speaks. You have crossed seas that do not exist, followed stars that do not shine, and returned with truths that will never be believed. You have done what cannot be done. You say nothing, it continues. Now you must choose remain a voyager forever seeking never anchoring, or become a beacon and let others find their own way by the light you carry. You hesitate, then you understand. This is not a test. It is a question of role, and you answer not with words but by kneeling. The figure places a hand on your head, and everything disappears. When you wake, you are aboard the São Jorge. The ship is different once again. No longer sailing. It is anchored in a harbor that feels both known and unknowable. The sky above is soft with morning light. The crew sleeps peacefully. João holds the unfinished book in his arms like a child holds a favorite toy. You rise, and you understand. You have chosen to be the light. You are no longer the boy from Sagres. You are the place others will dream of when they lose their way. You are the map. You are the myth. You are the next story. In the stillness that follows when the wind becomes a mere idea and the sea no longer breathes in restless rhythm, you remain at the edge of the ship, hands clasped lightly upon the railing, worn smooth by time, by salt, by thought. The harbor into which the São Jorge has anchored does not belong to any land you recall from your early lessons in Sagres, nor does it resemble the fantastical territories you later glimpsed in the celestial charts of Antalara or beneath the inverted city of reflected stars. This harbor is neither a location nor a destination. It is a moment made visible, a pause in motion, where things that were once hidden may be seen, and things that were once unspoken may now be understood. The light here is soft but not weak. It emanates not from a sun above or a moon drifting across night's black quilt, but from the harbor itself, as though the water carries within it the glow of distant remembrances. It washes gently against the sides of the ship, not with the insistence of tide, but with the reverence of a cathedral whisper. This light tinged with hues impossible to name, something between dusk and ivory, between firelight and breath, seems to erase shadows, even as it defines them more clearly. You do not call for the crew. You do not need to. One by one they emerge, drawn by the same compulsion that brought you here, the need to see. Not to observe, to see. Fully. Honestly. Without the distortions of fear or hope. João arrives first, of course, always somehow aware of what must come next before it is spoken. His face, though still youthful, now bears the marks of a deeper maturity, not in wrinkles or gray hair, but in stillness. His gaze has steadied. His shoulders have settled. He stands not as a boy awaiting instruction, but as a companion sharing in revelation. The others follow in silence. The cook hands dusted with what looks like ash but smells like rosemary carries a small bowl of broth and offers it to no one in particular, simply placing it near the mast, as one might place a gift upon an altar. The helmsman, once quick-tempered and prone to muttering at the clouds, now moves as though sculpted from wind-smoothed stone. The rest assemble quietly, not clustered in fear, not aligned in ranks, but scattered across the deck, like stars given human form, each radiant, each still in orbit around some unseen center. Then the captain appears. He wears no hat now, nor coat, nor insignia. He is dressed simply linen shirt, bare feet, eyes clear and unflinching. He does not address the crew. He merely nods to you, and with that gesture alone, a great many things are said. You understand at last that you have reached what some might call the end of the voyage, though it is not an end in the way most would define it. It is not a terminus, not a port carved into rock with walls of ledger stone and customs houses waiting to stamp your arrival. It is an event, a phenomenon, a revelation that must be embodied rather than recorded. And it begins not with sails lowered, nor with the anchor drawn, but with a question. A voice not heard but felt emerges from the very planks beneath your feet. It does not echo. It resonates. Deep, slow, familiar in the way a scent can evoke a long-forgotten lullaby. And it asks, what shall be remembered? The wind does not move. The sea does not stir. The crew says nothing, but your heart answers, and the answer unfolds. You walk to the center of the deck, to the spot where the moss has grown thickest. Its color has deepened again, now the shade of ancient forests seen only in dream. With hands steady and breath measured, you kneel and press your palms into it. Immediately you are elsewhere, not in body, but in mind, in memory, in the space where experience becomes architecture. Before you rises a corridor, not made of wood or stone, or any material known to ships or cities, but formed entirely of moments. On the left, the walls are lined with images, the black island's fog-wreathed shore, the stone circle etched in forgotten scripts, the library of sand where scrolls sang when unrolled. On the right, voices whisper your master in Sagres, telling you dreams have a peculiar habit of washing up on shore, João murmuring, I was never born. I was chosen the astrolabe spinning into dust, saying nothing yet meaning everything. You walk the corridor slowly. At its end is a door not closed, not open, but waiting. And when you touch it, you are returned to the deck, to the harbor, to the question, what shall be remembered? You rise and speak, not with authority, not with certainty, but with care. That we left you say, that we wondered, that we questioned stars until they blinked first, that we sailed into silence and returned bearing the shapes of stories too large to fit into language. The crew bows their heads, the ship exhales, and the harbor listens. From the sky, if it can still be called that, descends a shimmer. Not rain, not light, a memory given shape. It settles upon the sails, the ropes, the hands of every sailor. It etches itself gently into the grain of the ship, inscribes its tale into each oar and beam. The São Jorge becomes a reliquary, not of relics, but of meanings. The captain steps forward and places a single object upon the deck, the stone. The black smooth one with the iridescent line down the center. It has not pulsed since it guided you through the dreaming corridor of the Sky City, but now it gleams softly. The moss recoils, the stone splits. From within emerges a crystal. Inside the crystal, a map, not a traditional one. It contains no borders, no coasts, no scale. It is a map of calls, of invitations, of questions whispered from the ocean to those who listen. The captain holds it up. This is what we leave behind, he says. And this, he continues, gesturing toward the ship, toward the sea, toward you, is how we return. You understand. You have become part of the call. Not a messenger, a lighthouse, a reminder. You kneel once more, this time in front of the moss, not to speak, but to listen. And it speaks, not in words, in memory. You feel yourself split gently without pain into every version of yourself that could have been. The boy who never sailed, the man who never returned, the voice lost in wind. And all of them smile. All of them know. You return to yourself slowly. The harbor begins to dissolve. The ship lifts not physically, but existentially. It becomes lighter. It becomes idea. It becomes prayer, and you at the helm understand that your voyage is not over. It has only now gained the meaning required to begin, and so you write. On the final page of your new journal, you inscribe, we remembered, and because we remembered, we returned, and because we returned, we can now begin. You close the book. The horizon, distant and trembling, opens like a mouth preparing to sing. The sails fill, the moss glows, and the São Jorge, brave, tired, wholly sails forward. Into the story you were born to become. The sea you now enter is not the one you once knew, nor is it the sea you discovered within the realms of forgetting and mirrored stars. This new ocean, the one that opens before the São Jorge as its sails take wind, not from weather, but from understanding, exists in a liminal state. a space defined not by geography or any cartographer's compass, but by intention itself. Each ripple, each eddy, each shifting shadow beneath the hull speaks in a language older than sound, and yet newer than birth, a dialect born from voyages that leave no wake and return only through memory's slow pulse. You do not steer the ship so much as accompany it in its own form of dreaming. The rudder turns with the subtle grace of thought. The sails adjust themselves as if listening to inner monologues. You do not realize you are thinking. The São Jorge has become something more than vessel, no longer simply carrying you through worlds, but participating in the act of becoming. And you, once a junior navigator clinging to coordinates and lunar cycles, now find yourself navigating through emotional textures, guiding by sensation rather than sight, by resonance rather than rule. The crew has shifted as well. Their roles, once defined by maritime hierarchy, cook, lookout, helmsman, carpenter, have loosened, softened into something organic, more akin to parts of a living body than names on a roster. Juan, once restless with questions and fears, now walks barefoot across the deck, humming softly to himself, inscribing sigils with his finger into the damp wood where morning dew gathers. The cook no longer prepares meals. He now blends fragrances and sound-stirring broths that hum when inhaled, steeping herbs that seem to ease not hunger, but longing. The others tend to the ship as one might tend a grove or a shrine, polishing, listening, mending, but not out of necessity, out of reverence. Each day, or what passes for a day in this new world, without clocks or sunsets, the sea beneath the ship changes hue. Not randomly, not chaotically, but as though it mirrors the unspoken mood of the ship's collective consciousness. When laughter is shared above deck, the waves blush a warm amber, catching the soft gleam of imagined fires. When silence lingers, the water turns cobalt, reflecting the depth of reflection rather than sky. And when dreams are strong, when someone awakens speaking of a city with towers of bone and glass, or of birds who speak in rhyme, the sea pulses violet, threaded with threads of gold like veins in polished stone. It is in this sea of unspoken feeling, that the ship approaches the great spiral. You see it first as a distortion in the horizon, a slow curling of space that is neither storm nor mirage. At first, it appears as a trick of heat, an aberration, where the water's edge seems to fold inward, as though the sea itself is being drawn toward a center that does not yet exist. As you draw closer, the spiral resolves into clarity, a vast vortex, slow turning and radiant, not sucking downward, but rising upward, a helix of water light and air suspended in sublime stillness. It does not churn, it unfolds. And from its center emanates a sound, not a roar, not a crash, but a low harmonic tone that reverberates within your bones, as though the sea is singing a lullaby meant only for those who've forgotten how to sleep. The captain joins you at the prow, his face calm-lined, not with age, but with knowing. We're near the threshold, he says, and you understand that the spiral is not merely a phenomenon. It is a question, and perhaps also a gate. Will we pass through it? You ask, though the words feel unnecessary. He does not answer with words. Instead, he points. And there, at the heart of the spiral, suspended at the very axis of rotation, is another ship. At first glance, it appears to be a mirror of the São Jorge, matching her in size and shape, her masts tilted in the same angle, her sails furled with similar grace. But as the spiral turns and the light plays across the vessel's hull, you see that the other ship is not a twin. It is an echo. Its wood is translucent, veined with lines of starlight rather than sap. Its rigging shimmers like spider silk caught in a prism. And its figurehead, once a simple carving of St. George upon a horse, now bears a face that shifts with every blink. Your mother, your captain, your younger self, the stranger you met in the cave beneath the Black Island. The other ship floats in the center of the spiral, unmoving, timeless, and you realize this is your ship. Not in the sense of ownership, but in the sense of destiny. It is the version of the San Jorge that will exist if you choose to surrender the last vestiges of linear time. It is the vessel you become when you become myth. To reach it, you must pass through the spiral, and the spiral does not accept passengers who are still unsure of what they carry. You retreat below deck that night, unable to sleep. Dreams circle, but refuse to settle like gulls unwilling to land upon an unfamiliar mast. You light no candle. You make no notes. Instead, you lie in your hammock and listen. The ship breathes, not literally, not in the pumping rhythm of lungs, but in the creak of her joints, in the slow shift of her beams. She is not wood and sail. She is memory. And she is asking you a final question. What will you bring with you? Not cargo, not maps, not records. What will you carry forward etched upon your soul? You rise before dawn, if such a thing can still be marked. Joan meets you on the deck. He has woven a crown not of gold nor laurel, but of the moss that glows faintly in the dark. He does not place it upon your head. He places it upon the helm. For the ship, he says. The captain silent watches from the stern, and you give the order. The San Jorge turns her prow toward the spiral. The spiral accepts. As you enter, the world begins to dissolve, not in destruction, but in transformation. The water beneath you becomes light. The sails unfurl, not outward, but inward. Each creak of wood becomes a note in a song you once heard in your mother's womb. Each gust of wind becomes a voice one you forgot. But now remember, the ship rises, not upward, not forward, inward, into the spiral, into the echo, into yourself. And then, a still point. At the center, the San Jorge halts. The spiral vanishes. The echo ship is gone, and you are standing on the deck, alone. The crew has vanished, not lost, but released. You feel no fear. You feel no confusion. Only certainty. The ship is different now, not improved, not enhanced. True. The journal, your newest one, lies open on the deck. A single phrase has been written in your hand, though you do not remember writing it. When the sailor becomes the sea, the voyage truly begins. You step back from the helm. The sea unfolds, the horizon widens, and a new wind arrives. It carries with it no salt, no chill, only invitation. You raise the sail, and the world holds its breath. As the wind returns, not in gales or gusts, but in long, slow inhalations like the breath of something immense. Waking from eons of stillness, you raise the sail without urgency. The canvas responds as if it has been waiting its surface, catching the current, not with the effort of resistance, but with the grace of purpose finally aligned. The mast creaks with satisfaction. The rigging hums with memory. And the ship begins to move, not forward, not backward, but through. What lies beyond the spiral, beyond the reflection of the self, is not a different world, so much as a deeper layer of the one you thought you understood. It is not more surreal, more dangerous, more mysterious, but more aware. A place where each wave seems to know your name, where each gust of air carries not only direction, but emotion, where the world responds to your passage not by changing course, but by becoming itself more completely in response to your presence. You are not a visitor here. You are an ingredient. The water below the ship is no longer just sea, though it retains its gentle roll and cerulean shimmer. It has become something more, a surface upon which past and future are projected like lantern light cast upon silk. As you pass through its folds, you see beneath the surface glimpses of lives not your own, yet intimately familiar. A young girl, barefoot, drawing spirals in the sand with a driftwood stick. An old man lowering a fishing net into a dry well. A boy running across a bridge that stretches between clouds, chasing a kite whose string is made of starlight. You recognize them all. You are them all, or could have been, or still might be. And the ship too has changed. It no longer responds to ropes and rudders alone. It moves in harmony with attention. The wood bends subtly beneath your feet when you shift your thoughts. The sails tilt before you touch them. The tiller feels warm beneath your palm, not from sunlight, but from listening. You are no longer merely its captain, nor its steward. You are its co-dreamer. The crew has not returned in the physical sense, yet they are not gone. Their presence lingers embedded into the grain of the ship, folded into the knots of the rigging, echoed in the way the light moves across the deck. You hear Joam's voice in the wind, sometimes not speaking aloud, but remembering. You smell the cook's moss broth when the sun hits the rail at just the right angle. The captain's gaze still meets yours in the gleam of polished brass. You are not alone. You are never alone. Days pass, though. Day is a word that no longer holds authority here. Time has softened again, not dissolved, but taken on the form of water fluid, shape-shifting, difficult to grasp. You no longer mark your progress in leagues or in stars crossed, but in awareness. One morning, or what would once have been morning, you awaken to find that the sky has filled with symbols. Not stars, not clouds, but glowing lines that hover, rotate, and shift overhead in vast, slow-moving constellations of thought. Each symbol pulses with soft, translucent light, as though made from threads of pearl woven through the firmament. You study them. They are familiar, not because you were taught them, but because they were always there waiting. When you blink, you see them again on the walls of the ruined temple, beneath the black island, carved into the crystal dome of the library of scrolls, etched into the face of the shattered astrolabe that dissolved in your hands. You now understand that these signs were not placed in the world for you to find, but were always within you, only revealed when the external world became transparent enough to allow their reflection. You begin to write them in your journal, though not in ink. You use a piece of driftwood dipped in the light from your own breath, exhaled slowly with intention, until it condenses and reveals a glimmer, which you catch on the tip of the wood and drag across the parchment. The marks shimmer, then settle into place. The entries are not explanations, they are invitations. Each one opens a space inside you. Each one becomes a room you did not know you had. In one, you find a memory of your mother brushing your hair with slow, tender strokes before your first day at the harbor. In another, you relive the moment when your master handed you the brass sextant and said, "Don't follow the stars, convince them to follow you." In a third, you sit in silence across from the version of yourself that never left Sagres, sharing a meal of bread and olives, and knowing without words that he has forgiven you for becoming something he never imagined. And still the ship sails on. You begin to notice the sea changing once more. The water darkens, but not with storm. It deepens, taking on a depth, not of distance, but of remembrance. You lean over the side and peer into it, expecting to see your reflection. But instead, you see a city. Beneath the waves, an entire world unfolds. Not ruins residents, streets of coral and alabaster, towers woven from kelp and ivory, bridges strung like harp strings between cliffs of sapphire, and within it figures, not merfolk, not ghosts, people, sailors perhaps, or scholars or dreamers like you. They move slowly, gracefully, looking up toward your ship as though it too is part of their mythology. One raises a hand. You feel the gesture, not just see it. It enters you, lodges within your ribs, presses behind your eyes. A greeting, an offering, an understanding. You raise your hand in return, and the sea brightens, glowing from within like a lantern wrapped in silk. The ship slows. It does not stop. You have learned by now that nothing truly stops. Not thought, not motion, not journey. Even stillness contains movement, and so you drift forward into what the captain once called the sea that dreams. You reach an archipelago, but not one you can land upon. Each island floats just above the sea, suspended by currents of air or light or meaning. They are not made of earth, but of memory made solid. One glows golden and hums like a lullaby. Another is dark and cracked, its trees leafless, its air brittle. A third is covered in books, spines open to the wind, their pages turning without hands. You circle these islands. You do not land. They are not meant to be walked. They are meant to be read. You read with your presence, with your proximity. Each island offers a chapter. Each current carries a question. And slowly, you begin to realize what this part of the sea is. It is not a route to somewhere else. It is the passage through what has been carried. Your grief, your wonder, your doubt, your joy. Each one now takes form, and you sail through them all. The ship grows heavier and lighter in equal measure, like lungs filling and releasing. One night, as you lie on the deck with stars spinning in all directions beneath you, above you, within you, you whisper a word, not a command, a request. Why? The sea hears, the sky replies, and for a moment, brief, infinite, you understand everything, not as a sequence, not as a lesson, but as a feeling. You weep, not because you are sad, because you are full, and the ship sails on, toward the place that waits for all who return, having once been lost. A shore perhaps, a home perhaps, but more likely a version of yourself who opens their arms and says, I knew you'd make it. There comes a time slowly like twilight bleeding into night when you begin to sense that the voyage is no longer about forward motion or outward discovery. The maps once charted by stars and shorelines have been replaced by something more intimate, a compass of feeling, a sextant tuned to sorrow, joy, wonder, and remembrance. The São Jorge, that faithful vessel of oak and moss and whispered dreams, no longer glides across the surface of an ocean. Instead, it seems to drift along the quiet contours of an interior sea, sailing through the soft currents of your own reflection. You do not remember when the stars vanished, only that one morning you woke to a sky that had become a page, a pale expanse, etched not with constellations, but with sentences, long curling sentences written in the same hand that once appeared on your journal during the night of the spiral. These words, hanging in the sky like ribbons of smoke, seem to drift with the wind, some beginning before they end, others ending before they begin, yet all of them charged with a haunting familiarity. You do not read them in the conventional sense, rather you experience them. They move through you like music, like fragrance, like memory. At first, the sentences describe small, vivid scenes. A clay jug left beside a threshold, still damp from morning dew. A boy's hand trembling as he carves his initials into a plank of driftwood. A woman braiding her hair for the last time before walking into the sea. These images seem random, yet you feel their weight in your chest as though they were memories from a life you never lived, but somehow inherited. Then the sky's script begins to change. The words start addressing you. They speak of choices you have made not only on this journey, but in the hidden folds of your life, moments when you turned away or stepped forward or held your breath too long. They recount moments when you could have become someone else, but didn't. They remind you of doors you did not open and voices you ignored out of fear they might tell you the truth. You are not shamed by these revelations. You are known, and the knowing brings a warmth deeper than forgiveness. It brings peace. The sea beneath the ship stills completely. The water becomes so calm it ceases to move even with the wind. It transforms into something not quite solid, not quite liquid, a membrane between worlds. And within it, beneath it, you begin to see shapes. Not the cities of light and bone from before, not the archives or reflections. These are you layered versions of yourself swimming like memories rendered into flesh. Each one drifts beneath the hull, glancing upward occasionally, not with accusation, but with recognition. You see yourself at 10, weeping quietly into a handkerchief you had pretended was a sail. You see yourself at 17, standing on the dock, questioning whether your name would ever mean anything beyond the town in which it was spoken. You see yourself yesterday before you realized what this journey was asking of you. All of them wave, all of them dissolve. Juon appears beside you again. You do not ask how. You do not need to. He no longer looks like the boy who ran across the dock in Sagres, nor the quiet companion who carved spirals into the hull. He looks like understanding made human. He hands you something wrapped in cloth. It is the astrolabe, whole again, but changed. Its brass gleams with a warmth that feels like sleep. The black stone in the center is now translucent, and within it, you can see a slow swirl of color amber, rose indigo, that moves like a storm seen from 1,000 miles above. The rotating plates are etched not with coordinates or stars, but with symbols you recognize from dreams. The cracked bowl, the feather curled like a question mark, the eye set within a spiral. You hold it, it holds you, and for the first time in many days, perhaps weeks, perhaps lifetimes, you feel a subtle pull. Not of gravity, not of duty, but of return. Not a return to a place, a return to context. The captain comes above deck shortly thereafter. He does not speak. He looks at you as if he has seen this moment before, and perhaps he has. Perhaps he is another version of you further along the spiral, circled back to watch you from the other side. He nods once, and the sea shifts. The Southe begins to move again, not swiftly, not sharply, but with the determined grace of something that knows its path. And far ahead across the membrane of stillness and remembrance, a new horizon emerges. It is not a coastline, not a city. It is a mirror, not of silver or glass, of possibility. The ship sails toward it, and as you draw near, the mirror begins to show not what you are, but what you carry. The faces of those you met, the moments you mourned, the choices you did not know you made. You stand at the prow. The wind brushes your face like the fingers of an old friend. The mirror draws closer, and you understand that you must pass through it, not the ship. You, the ship, will remain. It will carry another someday, another dreamer, another voyager. But you, you're part of the journey, must now continue beyond the hull. You turn, you press your palm against the mast. You whisper your thanks not as a ritual but as truth. The wood pulses once gently. You step to the rail. Juon was there again. He hands you the journal, now full. Every page glows softly. You do not open it. You hold it to your chest, and you step into the mirror. For a moment, long, endless, you fall. But it is not falling. It is being reassembled. Every part of you, once scattered across time, every moment stretched too thin by longing or regret, comes rushing inward. You are remade, and then you awaken. Not on a ship, not in a sea, in a small cottage, Sagres, but not as it was, as it could have been. The wood is warm beneath your feet. Outside, gulls cry in slow rhythm, not urgent, but melodic. The sun is low, the tide gentle, and on the table before you lies a map, not drawn by hand, drawn by story. It charts not oceans, but questions, and in the center it says only, you were here. You step outside. The world is the same. The world is different. You are not returned. You are becoming. The Southe is still out there, waiting, sailing, carrying, and someday someone will find your journal, and they will follow, and they will write. We are sailing not toward answers, but into the shape of better questions. When you open your eyes the next time, you are walking, not sailing along the edge of a quiet inlet where the sea meets land with the gentle certainty of someone returning home after a long absence, not to reclaim anything, but simply to be acknowledged. The sand beneath your feet is dark and smooth, the kind that holds footprints for only a moment before allowing the wind to smooth them into forgetfulness. The air is rich with salt, but also with something more delicate, more elusive an aroma that reminds you of parchment and old cedar, the smell of a memory not quite yours, not quite lost. The world is utterly quiet, but not empty. There is a stillness here that does not signify the absence of life, but the fullness of presence. It is the stillness of a room where a newborn has just fallen asleep, or of a chapel just after the last candle has been extinguished, where breath itself dares not break the sanctity of the moment. This silence does not demand anything from you. It only invites. It invites you to remember, not as a task, but as a return to your own essence. To your left, the sea extends outwards into the horizon, glistening with that familiar kind of light that looks almost liquid, almost alive. Yet you can feel in your bones that it is not the same sea you crossed aboard the São Jorge. That sea was a threshold. This one is an arrival. It does not call to be crossed. It calls to be witnessed. And so you sit there at the edge of the water, your legs folded beneath you and your hands resting on your knees. You allow yourself to feel the weight of everything that has passed. You are no longer the boy who left Sagres with salt in his veins and uncertainty in his heart. You are no longer the one who stood trembling before ruins older than language. You are no longer the sailor who held the shattered astrolabe in his hands and wondered whether all maps were lies drawn by the longing of men. You are no longer the version of yourself who begged the stars to point the way home. You are something else now. You are not a name. You are not a role. You are not even a story, not in the way stories are told by firelight, to pass the time or to teach lessons. You are the condition of remembering, and remembering is perhaps the final voyage. Somewhere behind you, or perhaps within you, the ship still sails. You can feel it faint and steady like a heartbeat at the edge of perception. You do not need to see it to know it is there, just as you do not need to breathe in to know there is air. The São Jorge has become a part of you. Not a possession, not even a symbol, a limb, a memory that lives and moves and carries others forward, long after your own voyage has concluded. Time here is not measured in days or hours. It is measured in integrations, in the slow weaving together of all the selves you were into the self you have finally accepted. The process is not fast. It is not easy. It is not even linear, but it is happening. One morning, though, you cannot say how many have passed since you first sat by the shore. You awaken to find something in your hand. You do not remember reaching for it, nor does it feel foreign to your grasp. It is a seed, small, smooth, pale as bone with a single spiral etched into its shell. You rise, you walk. There is a grove inland not far from the inlet. Its trees are tall and strange, their bark etched with the same symbols you once saw in the sky. The curling phrases, the unfolding questions, the sigils that seemed to shimmer at the edge of thought. No one tends this grove. It needs no tending. It exists in a state of continuous offering. Leaves fall and grow back. Branches bend without breaking. Shadows stretch not with the sun, but with your own contemplation. At the center of the grove, you find a patch of bare earth. You do not ask if it is the right place. You kneel and press the seed into the soil, and the earth exhales. The ground trembles not violently, but with anticipation. And the moment the seed disappears beneath the surface, something in the air changes. It thickens, warms, begins to sing. Not with notes, not with melody, with story. The grove becomes a cathedral of memory, and you, its quiet officiant, stand at the threshold of something vast and unnamed. From the trees, whispers rise. not voices, whispers, gentle retellings of moments you once thought unremarkable, but which now shimmer with sacred significance. The time you tied a rope with one hand while clutching a compass with the other. The way your fingertips trembled when you first set foot on the black sand of the uncharted island. The shape of your thoughts as you passed through the spiral's luminous eye. Each memory is not a return, it is a planting. You realize then that you are not the gardener, you are the soil. The stories you lived were not for you alone. They were seeds meant to take root in the world, to bloom in the minds of those yet to journey, to provide shade for travelers who will never know your name, but who will rest beneath the branches of what you once carried. You remain in the grove for many days, though again time loses its tyranny here. You tend nothing, you simply exist, and in doing so, you witness. You witness the first sprout emerge from the place you planted the seed. It glows faintly in the evening mist, a curl of light shaped like a question mark. You witness clouds gather above the sea and part without thunder, as if rehearsing storms long forgotten. You witness a bird one you've never seen before, with feathers like fragments of stained glass land on a branch beside you, peer into your eyes, and then fly away, leaving behind a single note written on the breeze. Begin again. And so you do. You walk once more to the inlet. The water welcomes you. The air hums. And as you step into the surf, it does not pull you under. It lifts you. You do not sink. You rise. The sea becomes sky. The sky becomes canvas. And you become pen. You write not with ink. You write with breath, with memory, with grace. And across the surface of what was once sea and is now possibility, you inscribe the only map that matters. Here there be questions. May you never run out of them. And as you write, you smile, not because the journey is over, but because it is not. Not for you, not for anyone. Because the Soothe sails still. Because the stars still wait. Because somewhere, someone is picking up your journal and wondering if the stories are true. And you hope they never find out. Because truth is not the point. The point is to sail again, to sail always. And now, gentle traveler, the sail has quieted. The wind has softened, and the sea, ever vast, ever whispering, has drawn its curtain of stars across the sky. You are no longer at the helm, nor standing at the edge of the unknown. You are resting now somewhere between the last page and the next breath, where all true voyages must eventually lead not to an ending, but to a stillness where meaning can settle. The Soothe drifts not away from you, but into you, becoming something more intimate than memory, a feeling stitched into your heartbeat, a rhythm embedded in the hush between thoughts. The ship is no longer distant on the horizon. It is within you, now moored in the safe harbor of your becoming. You have traveled far, not just across seas or symbols, but through the long corridors of selfhood, down into the roots of remembrance, and upward through the canopy of myth. You've seen cities built from silent stars that echo your name, and tides that do not move unless asked kindly. And through it all, you have changed not into something else, but into more of what you already were. So rest now. Let the questions you carry curl softly beside you, like a cat in the dark. Let the map fade from your hands, knowing it has already imprinted itself in your soul. There will be other journeys. There will be other ships. But for now, for tonight, let this one rock you into the quiet. The waves have stories yet to tell, but they can wait until morning. You have remembered enough for one night. Close your eyes. Let go. The sea will keep you. And the stars, yes, the stars remember everything. Sleep well.